movies, sci-fi movies have a pretty wide margin of error. Sci-fi movies tend to be kind of bad sometimes, tend to be pretty good sometimes. Yeah! Woo! Nailed the intro.
Mostly bad.
Mostly bad, I guess. Yeah, there are a lot of real bad sci-fi movies. And then there are incredible sci-fi movies like Battlefield Earth. With John Travolta. Which is an incredible...
I've seen it!
I've seen enough of it to know it's terrible. I mean, amazing. Whichever. I'm a Scientologist now, by the way.
Whatever. Keep on with it.
Right. So, this week... as you can probably tell from the title, looking at the whole way that YouTube works, is Blade Runner 2049. And I was honestly...
he was like rock solid hard through the whole thing.
I was ready to just hit record on this video, say the word 10, and then just end the video. Because that's all I can really say about it. No, there was so much to say to where this is going to be like a 57-minute long video.
It's not. Not gonna happen.
Okay, fine. Gosh, I don't know. It's a movie that is so uniquely incredible that I don't even know where to start with it. It does everything so right that I'm speechless. I was speechless after I watched it. People ask me how it was, and all I can just do is kind of stare at them like I've just had a stroke and go, yeah. It's so good. It's so good. We watched. So good. He shed a tear. I shed a single tear at the end, and it was marvelous. By God, this movie, I'm gonna come out and say it, this was a triumph. Not in sci-fi alone, but in just film in general. This movie was an absolute lifetime achievement. The goose is loose. It's incredible. Ryan Gosling stacking up those incredible roles year after year. Dave Bautista proving that despite the fact that he's not as big of a movie star as The Rock, is honestly a better character actor. He's a better actor than The Rock, and he was only in this movie for not even very long. But
shouldn't be second billed.
Well, that's probably in order of appearance.
Oh.
If you look at that, we got IMDb up on the other screen.
It says first build only.
Yeah.
Whatever. He wasn't. He should be higher up on the list than Jared Leto, I think. I mean, sorry, lower.
Right.
Because he was not in it as much as he was.
Speaking of Jared Leto, holy cow, his first relevant role in I don't know how long. He actually did something worth doing and wasn't just like, I'm a method actor. By that I mean, I'm looking for an excuse to be an asshole to all my castmates. Which he probably could have done with this movie too, so never mind. Yeah, Jared Leto, kind of the antagonist, kind of, but not really. I don't know. We watched the original Blade Runner before we watched 2049. Just kind of as a crash course and everything, which is definitely necessary. You definitely need to see the first one before watching this one because you'll be pretty lost.
Like, immediately before.
Yeah. And much like the first one, this is real ambiguous in terms of who's good, who's bad, who's right, who's wrong. It's just kind of the nature of the movie and of the plot in itself. It's the whole questioning of what does it mean to be human, what does it mean to be alive, what is anything. Like, I've had a 3-day long existential crisis after watching this movie because I don't even know what life is anymore. I truly don't. The questions that this movie poses are so incredible. And that's the biggest thing about this movie. I have talked to some people who said that they hated it. They were like, oh, it's a bad movie. It was so long, it was so hard to follow, a bad sci-fi movie. It's like, no. There is no reason we should drag a movie down to the status quo. What are you doing? Oh, there's no reason...
2 hours, 44 minutes.
2 hours and 44 minutes, yeah. We shouldn't grade sci-fi movies on the level of the average sci-fi movie. There's no reason for that. There's no reason why we have to say, oh, well, Transformers was a blockbuster hit and it was only so good, so any other sci-fi movie that does better is just trying too hard. It's like, no, there's absolutely no reason for that. And this movie doesn't do that. This is not an action movie with a bunch of crazy fight scenes. There are some fight scenes, and there's some action, that's true, yes. But above all else, this is a noir mystery film. This is a thriller, and it's the most thrilling of all thrillers.
It makes you think.
It really does, yeah. It is.
It's not about like Transformers, like, ooh,
no.
Look at this, look at that, look at that.
If you want that, I'm sure that the new Pacific Rim movie is going to be great, but this is not a Pacific Rim movie. This is not even remotely close. And anybody who has seen the original Blade Runner will already know that.
This is the sci-fi movie for people who don't like sci-fi movies, because I liked it.
Yeah.
People who like good movies.
It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. At risk of us both sounding just horribly pretentious, it's just amazing. Honestly, I am willing to say that this movie is better than the original, and I'm not even going to second guess myself there. I am so confident in this movie's quality that I'm not even gonna say, well, I guess it did this better than the original, and well, maybe this was a little better. No, this was straight up better in pretty much every way. The acting was better. The atmosphere was more varied, which I think made it better. The soundtrack wasn't better, I don't think. It was kind of your typical Hans Zimmer fare with a bunch of ominous, loud notes and then just kind of a drone. It was still a good soundtrack. I'm not saying anything bad about the soundtrack at all, but the Vangelis soundtrack from the original was really in a class of its own, and unfortunately that could not quite be topped with this one. Could have used more synth, is what I'm saying. But
everything else, pretty much.
Oh, yeah. Even in terms of story, like, you watch the first Blade Runner, it's a pretty plain-cut story, minus the, like, philosophical questions that it asks, which it asks plenty of them, but the first one, it's like, oh yeah, here's Harrison Ford, he plays a Blade Runner, he has to kill these replicants because reasons, and then he goes through, and then he does it, and then the movie ends. Not a lot on the side. A couple things on the side here, but this movie, the plot is not even that simple. It's not like, oh, he's a Blade Runner, so kill this target and you're done. It's like, there's hardly any of that, actually. It's the fact that Gosling is a Blade Runner is almost completely inconsequential. It's not. It does matter. Every detail in this movie matters. Which is another thing that I kind of wanted to touch on if I'm going to go on a little bit of a tirade here. Just a little tangent off into another way. It is, of course, an R-rated movie, and
it was so good.
I've seen so many R-rated movies that are rated R for the sake of being rated R. Where it's like, alright, let's slam a bunch of profanities in this scene just so that we can make that R cut, or we're just going to have this much violence just because we can, or here's this shoehorn sex scene. And I'm not a prude, I'm not offended by any of that, but this is a movie where every single thing that makes it R-rated was necessary. Everything that appeared for a reason. Every profanity existed for a reason. Every ounce of nudity was there to prove a point. It's every act of violence, just every single thing combined perfectly for a reason, just as every plot point did, as every individual still shot did. There was not a frame of this movie wasted. And that, to me, is incredible. The entire time I watched it, there was always something interesting to look at, even in the most minimalistic of scenes. The minimalism made it incredible enough. And then, for the opposite of that, when there was so much going on, and just these huge, elaborate sets with like thousands of props in frame, it was amazing. It had everything from every end of the spectrum, and it's just absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Nothing to add. All right.
It was good. It was real good.
You know what? I figure every now and then I'll just stop talking in case you've had something inside you felt like you had to say.
Sometimes I just kind of trail off on my own thoughts. But I think that it was so good because, well, not just because they made it rated R, but every other movie that's not good because it's fucking PG-13. And you're like, oh my gosh, it would be so good if they just let it go. And they did.
Right. This movie didn't hold back. But again, it didn't hold back with reason. Nothing was shoehorned into it. It was
beautiful.
Oh gosh, it was truly beautiful. Everything about this movie.
It was like art.
Yes, this movie is art, and we're not just like art that came out of a high school art class. This was like a Da Vinci painting in movie form. And gosh, I almost regret watching it because now there's not going to be like a single sci-fi movie that even comes close. Star Wars Episode 8 is going to leave me disappointed from start to finish because I've watched Blade Runner. Not to say that Star Wars is, super swanky or anything like that, but gosh. Like, I have so many more things to say, like, about the movie, but I feel like I should just kind of hold back and kind of refrain, because so much of the thrill of it is witnessing every single tiny thing. Even things that aren't a spoiler. Even just mentioning them would be a spoiler, because it's such a delight to just see it happen. Just the smallest things. Every time that a scene changes and it goes into something else, there's a tiny little detail that catches your eye, and it gets you interested. And then that tiny detail turns into something, and then that something becomes even bigger, and oh gosh, I don't know. It's just so amazing in every single way. And I've said that so many times, but it cannot be understated enough. I love this movie.
Is this like your new favorite movie?
This probably my new favorite movie, to be honest.
It's
I mean, being that my previous favorite movie was Clerks, they're kind of completely different beasts. Can't really compare Clerks to Blade Runner, but oh yeah, outstanding. One of the many comments that I read online said something kind of funny too, where it said, "This is the first movie in 5 years where Harrison Ford looks like he gives a shit."
Yeah, it's true.
Like Han Solo, he was just in Star Wars to be in Star Wars. Harrison Ford didn't care if he was in Star Wars.
He didn't want to be in it.
No, true. He actively didn't want to be in it. Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Alien weird stuff. He didn't really seem like he cared in that movie either. He wanted to be in that more than Star Wars, so he probably cared a little, but he put on the performance of his life in this movie.
He didn't have that big of a role. He comes in probably like
Full
two hours into the movie. But still.
When he's on screen, he is killing it. This is Harrison Ford at his best. Like, he nails the role. I mean, obviously, he played the original role like 30 years ago, but you little bastard. You little bastard. But, yeah, no, great acting. Ryan Gosling was great. Dave Bautista was great. Even Jared Leto was great.
That cute girl was great.
Which cute girl?
I
Ana de
don't
Armas.
want to say what she was, but...
Yeah, Ana de Armas looked perfect the entire movie, which was great because she was literally supposed to be perfect.
Yeah.
Gosh, it was fantastic. Yeah. So Ana de Armas was fantastic. Gosh. Not a poor performance in the entire movie. Every little background character played their role perfectly. It's a one of a kind. It truly is. And if it's ever topped, I'll be thankful, because if you can get better than this, then holy cow, that's impressive. Obviously, I spoiled it at the very start of the video, but I give this movie an easy 10, and I don't just hand those out. I think very, very few movies can be considered perfect, but never in the 3 hours of this movie was there a minute spent where I said that didn't have to happen, or that could have been different. Every single minute was spent exactly as it should have been. The pacing was perfect. Even the long scenes where you're confused made you confused in all the right ways. It was just an absolute spectacle. From the second that you see any kind of picture until the very, very ending shot before the credits. Absolute 10. Would watch again, will watch again. And that's it. It's amazing. What would you give it?
Maybe like 9.3. It can't be a 10 because Leonardo is not in it.
Who cares if Leonardo is not in it when the goose himself is the lead?
Now, I wouldn't call it absolutely perfect like you just did, but it was really good.
I'm going to hire a divorce lawyer.
Whatever.
No. Yeah, perfect 10 from me, 9.3 from her, which is still an ungodly score for any movie to get that high.
And what does it have?
On IMDb, it is currently sitting at a pretty 8.4 out of 10, which for IMDb is ridiculous. It is
Number
currently
61
on the top movies. It has surpassed the original on IMDb, so I am vindicated when I say that this was better. It's...
What number is the original?
The original Blade Runner is number 145.
Oh.
Just, for those arbitrary numbers that everybody loves there. Either way, incredible movie. If you haven't had the opportunity to watch it, please do. You owe it to yourself. It's amazing. End of story. Any last words?
No.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for watching.